and Russ Thompson will be presenting this evening.
Can I make a few opening comments?
Yes. Superintendent Hogaboom.
Thanks, Russ. So we are very excited about the possibility of working with the city for workforce housing. We know that Novato in particular and Marin in general is very expensive to live here. And one of our goals, which I'm sure is one of yours, is to attract and retain the best people possible. And unfortunately, people just can't afford to live here. So we've been thinking about the idea of developing a property on San Andreas property where we have about 20 acres and the city has about 4 acres right next to that. We're in very preliminary stages of thinking about this. We did a joint survey, a housing survey, to see if we would have the interest, and it was very apparent from that survey that we would have the interest. So we've been talking a lot about what needs to be done, and one of the first things we want to do is a feasibility study. So I want to thank the city for kicking in the cost. I think was about $66,000, split a third. The city council used some, I think, affordable housing funds. We got some money from the Marin Community Foundation as well as from the Haas Foundation to pay for the feasibility study. So tonight is really, Russ is just going to go over some zoning issues and how the report is going to be handled. But we haven't got any of the results back from the reports yet. So we've scheduled a board meeting on February 26th, a special board meeting where we will really present the report, get all kinds of public comments and questions. So tonight really is just a very preliminary outline so everybody knows kind of what we're doing with this feasibility study. So Russ, take it away and thank you.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council and Board of Trustees. So as like Jim said, we've been working for the last several months, have engaged some different environmental consultants and to help us characterize the site that's being considered for the housing project. Terry, can you advance that? This doesn't seem to be working there. So tonight is just the first step. We're very early in the process. What we're working on is trying to just characterize the site constraints out there. There's a lot of processes and steps ahead of us as the project develops. But as Jim said, there is no specific project yet. We know we're interested in the housing project, but it's very early. So you can. So here's just an overview of the school district property just south of San Marin Drive and east of San Andreas. It's 21 acres of school district property. And the city property, go ahead and advance it. The city property is the 4 acres adjacent to it. So clearly the school district is the majority property owner in this proposal, and they're taking the lead on that. So we've developed the memorandum of understanding that's guiding this initial phase of the work, just where the school board and the city agreed to investigate and explore the potential development of this site. And as Jim said, it's difficult to attract. All public agencies are having a tough time attracting and retaining qualified candidates, and housing costs here in Marin County are a major factor in that. So this project's intended to serve the needs of the public employees, and we've agreed to just collaborate as this project develops and as we do public outreach as it comes into focus. So what we've been working on, we have consultants right now working on archaeological surface surveys. The field work has been completed. We're expecting the draft report next week. Again, the biological constraints, there are some potential wetlands out there on the site, so those are being characterized, as well as any kind of wildlife and potentially protected species that are out on the site. So there's an initial review of those. That field work has been done, and that report is due next week also. We have a local geotechnical engineer that is looking at and is very familiar with that area. He's looking at the soils conditions that'll be applicable to land development out there. And then the survey, which I think the next slide is the draft is done. So we've had an aerial photograph flown by a drone, and the contour lines developed. So this is a kind of an enhancement above and beyond what we had in our GPS system. It's an accurate and up-to-date survey of the property, and so they're surveying the boundary, identifying any encroachments, and getting that topography identified. So as far as the current zoning out there, the school district property is zoned R4PD, and that's generally referred to as medium density detached. So it's the density ranges in that zoning between 4 and 7 units per acre. It allows duplexes, but not attached multiple family housing. So that would require, if that's where the project ultimately goes or not, or a portion of it goes that way, there would need to be some general plan amendment work looked at and considered. But the current zoning right now is 6,000 square foot minimum lot size, kind of a typical subdivision lot in that area, 50 feet wide, 75 feet deep minimum, and then the building coverages. So it's just kind of typical of that area. So that's the 21 acres the school owns. The city parcel is zoned for parks and playgrounds. And so any project is going to have some parks components, and so the city's parcel could become a key part of that project too, as it's considered. So as far as public outreach, there was a brief meeting in September with the San Marin Improvement Association. There was about 50 people showed up. Very good. The school district staff and Regan and I were there to just kind of talk about where we were headed, telling them we don't have a specific proposal, but we're investigating, the different options for us. So we have tonight's meeting, as mentioned earlier. Your board will be considering all of the final feasibility documents in their final form in February. The council will have to schedule some meeting where we also review that. And in the MOU, it talks about between February and April that the development options would start coming into focus, and so we'll be working with the school staff to help look at that. Go ahead. And then really, I think as you're well aware, there's two really fortunate. Marin Community Foundation donated $23,000 towards this effort, as well as the Haas Foundation of $23,000. I think it's safe to say that the studies that we have contracted will be well within the available funding, so there's no concerns there. That was good news. And then the next steps will include, as it comes into focus, some kind of project administration and financing model, and just exactly what the concept is, and who may be involved, or how it's going to move forward as far as an RFP or some other model. But this is not something new. I mean, other agencies in California are doing it, and so this is an ambitious and worthwhile proposal. I think that's it. I'm just here to answer any questions. But the news tonight is within probably a week or two, we'll have the draft report, so we're on schedule to get that done in November, and everything's coming in on budget. So no surprises yet.
Okay, thank you. Trustees, questions? We do have some public comment. If there are none from trustees, we'll move on. Council member questions for right now? Councilmember Eklund?
Yes. First of all, I wanted to remind everybody that when the Hamilton reuse plan was adopted, the city developed 600 affordable housing units, and Ross was very much engaged in all of that, of which 600 affordable housing units, of which 300 was devoted to rental and 300 ownership. And a third of the 600 was set aside for public employees. And unfortunately, we did not get enough of the public employees. We first started with the city, then expanded to public employees within Novato, and then eventually went to the whole county. We still didn't get enough to take up the third of the housing out at Hamilton. And so we did get, though, a teacher. We did get somebody working in the school administrative program, and also a maintenance worker and some others. But my question is that when I looked at the schedule that's on page 4 of attachment 1, I was struck by the fact that there really was not any place in there for a, quote, decision point. You went right from getting the feasibility study and then identifying future areas for further investigation, and then determine the structures and project financing, and then agree on policies for apportionment of the local number of housing units. But on that schedule, there was no decision point, at which point, you know, the school district and the city needs to make a decision. So I guess as before the feasibility study comes back to the city council, I would assume that we're going to get a more refined schedule that does reflect some sort of decision points, because it appears as though, and
So
I've got,
let's let Russ answer the
I
question.
will, and
We can move on.
it appears, and I've gotten calls to this saying, well, in fact, has the city already made up its mind? It's going to continue with these housing units. And I said, no, we haven't decided anything. So there needs to be that decision point so that the public, and if you could address at what point we will be getting that schedule so that the public will have a better understanding of when they can weigh in before the city council meeting and also before the school district board.
So this, Councilwoman Eklund, so this initial phase is really just the investigation of the site characteristics. In there, in the MOU, it talks about that the school district and the city will work together, and whatever that approval process moving forward will be developed. So we don't have a exact timeline of when that's going to be, but certainly that would come back to the city council and to the board once a development project kind of materializes.
So we will be getting a schedule when we receive the feasibility study on when decision points will be made?
I don't know if, I think that remains to be kind of worked out between staff but the feasibility study is not going to result in, okay, here is the project. I mean, this is just the site characteristics. The next phase will then be looking at the different options about how many units, what type of units, how would the city and the school district interact and put that deal together. But again, this is largely a school district project, being the majority property owner. So we would look to them to see, you know, what works for them, but we would be, you know, with our fiduciary, you know, duty for the city, we would be involved with those negotiations and discussions. So that will eventually come back to the city council before any decisions are made about city involvement.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other council members? No? Okay. Oh, Pro Tem.
I was wondering if, as a general rule, there will be some sort of mix so that you have market rate housing paying for the bulk of the project and then subsidizing part of the workplace housing. Do you have any idea about that? And if that's not what's happening, do you have an idea of where the funds might be coming from?
So I'll take that one, Russ. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Drew, Council and Board of Trustees. That's a great question. I think you may be just jumping a little bit ahead in the process. We're starting with the site assessment now, trying to determine the constraints. Next aspects, we'll be looking into those specifics and trying to determine more of a project and the reality there. And so we'll definitely be bringing that back to you at a future date. Big part of the project.
So the answer is no idea, basically, right?
The answer is yes, we have an idea, but until we have more data and detail, we'll bring that forward to you at that time.
So would you share with us the information you gave to the San Bernardino Neighborhood Association?
No, not at this time. That's not really the intent of tonight's meeting. We can provide that to you at any time, and I know that the school district took detailed notes and they provided them and made them available on their website, so all of that's there for you, but if you'd like to discuss that at a future date, we can definitely do so.
Okay. We do have some public comments. I'd like to move along. I have 3 cards. I have Ed Schultz, Don Scioli, and Tim Red, I believe it is. If I pronounce that wrong, excuse me, but if you could be prepared to speak in that order, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we got a feasibility study. We might not be able to do anything there based upon what's kind of come from the feasibility study. Question for Russ, have we got them all in yet? Have the people punched their holes? That's what I'm concerned about.
They're not in yet.
Yeah, because history way back when they were developing San Marin, there was a convolution of all the drainage systems came into that area that the school district owns. So there's a whole bunch of drainage pipes into that system. So we have to be very careful when Miller Pacific punches those holes, because they have a clause on page 26, 7.5, saying if they drill a hole and hit one of our pipes, we have to pay for it. So we've got to be careful when Miller Pacific punches those holes. And again, we don't even know if we can do anything with that property yet. And also, there's one clause in there that's kind of scary. It says the initial for local workforce without limitations. So we cannot limit it, according to the document here, just to our own workforce housing here in Nevada. And I think we got to make sure we got what we can do with the property first before we get too excited about who can move in and who can't move in. Let's make sure it's buildable first. It might not even be that. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Scioli.
Members of the councils, school board members. First of all, my wife and I are very pro affordable housing. A couple of my children have moved back to our house because of the high cost of rent, so we get the whole situation. However, the San Andreas school site may not be the best place to develop. Some of you may know or you may not know that there used to be on the corner, you saw it on the slide projector, the adjacent site used to be Bill's Texaco Station. Now, between 1980 and 1990, there were 5 toxic leaks from that site. And even though the situation was so bad that the condos adjacent to it had to be evacuated twice. Now, the EPA, the site was demolished, the station was demolished in 1990, and the EPA cleared the site in 2000. However, if you know anything about toxic leaks, they have a tendency to plume away from the site of the leak. As per the EPA's own diagrams here, they only excavated the site of the gas station and 2 of the condos. They never touched the field. It was untouched. We at San Marin, the neighbors of San Marin, are very worried that if you do a years-long construction project in there, who knows what's going to be brought up. Potentially toxic materials can be in the air. Potentially toxic materials can be in the water. So that's one of the major the worries of the people in the neighborhood. We've produced a 5-minute video. It's on sanmarinneighbors.com. We go into it in depth. We've done copious research on this site, and I urge you to all take a look at it. It's on sanmarinneighbors.com, and that's my comment now. Thank you.
Thank you. The last comment card I have is Tim Reed. Is it? Roche. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I was at the San Marin Improvement Association meeting a month or so ago. Thank you for putting that together. During that meeting, there was cited that there are some areas that you had referenced where this has successfully happened, I believe in San Mateo. I was hoping that that was going to be forthcoming and presented in tonight's packet that we received. I don't see that. Maybe it's an oversight, or possibly we could have a specific date when we will be able to take a look at that for the general public and the council as well, see how that works. Also, that's one. The second piece that I picked up there was that in order for this to succeed, the general plan needs to be revised. So I would hope and I encourage that that is really vigorously debated when we talk about changing the general plan. And it impacts everybody in that neighborhood, in the community, and it has a big impact on it. So do we have any information regarding when we might have those sites that we can reference? Thank you.
Yeah, so we're just too early on. We have been talking to San Mateo. There's actually a lot of school districts that are doing public housing and teacher housing. So That's just a report on those other kinds of housing is further down the road. But this will go through a process like any other process if it gets that far about discussing the pros and the cons, a planning commission and all that. So
what I was specifically wondering, that we had referenced successful implementations where this has already taken place, past tense, not future tense or ongoing. Mm-hmm. What is existing at this time that we can use as a template to make sure that it's done successfully?
Right. We do have those, but we're too early on for that. But we will get to those. There have been many successful projects in California.
Great. I'd like to find out about them.
Thank you. So given that this is public comment, we'll follow up with members of the public afterwards. Okay. Thank you, President Butler.
All right. That concludes our public comment. I don't have any questions or comments from the trustees or council members. So, Councilmember Lucan.
Just make one. I just want to commend the school district and the city for working together on this and remind everybody it is very early on in the process. I know it's already started to create a couple of questions, which are good. And if we weren't doing anything, that would be creating questions as well. So it's a good thing to be looking into as a community. And just throw out one data point because I think it's important anytime we talk about housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, whatever it's called. In Marin, a family of 4 making $117,000 a year qualifies for affordable housing. And I think that's an important data point. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we all know it's very expensive to live here. So,
yes, Trustee Miller.
Just as a point of reference, Member Eklund, you and I sat through this exercise. We jointly, as a city council, a school district, and other public agencies, found ways to create some opportunities for public housing in Hamilton. We're one of the few cities in the state of California that's been effective at doing that. It was a process. It wasn't a month or 2 months. It was more like 2 years or 4 years. It was an effort. I look forward to us being able to do that again. We have a precedent of a collective relationship, and there'll be differences in points of view along the way. We were able to find common ground last time, and I look forward to taking a similar path and find common ground for not just between the two bodies, but for the community of Novato, so we are a stronger, better community. And that was a lot of public input and consideration and resolution. And so I'm hoping for put a bright light on this. This is an opportunity, I think, for us all. We just have to do our work.
Right, correct. All right, so just as Superintendent Hogaboom stated, the school district will be meeting on February 26th, this next school, 2019, for another update. And we clearly understand that we have to be very transparent on this project. It's important that the community is involved in it. We are in the very preliminary stages of it. Our staff is doing quite a bit of work to get everything in order and learn quite a bit. So I appreciate that work that's happening. All right, so that concludes this joint meeting. I want to thank City Manager Candelario and Superintendent Hogaboom for putting together a very productive and a great agenda for us this evening. We were able to get things done collectively and as partners, and appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much, Board Chair Butler. I wanted to just take a quick second and also, on behalf of the city, thank you all for participating with us tonight. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I just think it's so important for us to get together and meet this way and highlight all of the collaborative efforts that we have together between the district and the city. Obviously, our agenda tonight showed that. We serve the same population. Right? So it's the city of Novato, so our efforts together are really beneficial. Obviously, working collaboratively, there's much more opportunity for success and actually more opportunity to do things better. And the strengths that we have from our school district melded with the strengths that we have with the city, I think is just a great partnership to try and come up with something better. The items that you saw on the council's agenda tonight are very important to this community, and I'm so glad that we're going to be moving those forward and seeing action on those. And of course, then the successes that'll come out of that for our residents and our youth and in the community. So thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it. And I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Great. Thank you so much. I just want to remind everyone here, we're going to resume our regularly scheduled council meeting in about 5 minutes. So we're going to take a quick break when we adjourn from here. Thank you again to the Novato Unified School District, the trustees for coming. I think you tonight reminded us that when we succeed together. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming. And we'll come back in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.